Hi, welcome back to Christine's Corner. I'm glad you can watch me and watch us. I know I've had a couple of these ladies on before. I have Jean Kelly to my right, and she was the reader of children's books. And Doreen, to the far right, Doreen Breen, and she has been here many times to talk about her warrior woman and senior citizen and domestic violence. But today is really even more exciting. They're from different countries. Jean is from England and Doreen is from Scotland. So I'm going to have them talk a little bit about their countries. Since you're to my right, Jean, you said we'll just touch on a little bit of things like the war. You said you're probably around 8 when the bombing in England.
I was 8 years old when the war came to a cease, thank God. I was lucky in many ways because I didn't have any fear that if I had been older, I would have realized more what was happening, and perhaps that would have created a lot more fear. It was a terrible time. It was a time of strength when everybody pulled together and helped one another. There are many, many stories about World War II, but basically we became extremely organized, and we, even with food, every single thing was rationed, and we all had ration books.
Ration books?
Ration books. And we took our ration books to the grocery store, to every store, wherever we were going. Clothing was rationed.
Wow.
So no one wasted anything.
No.
If you had something that you weren't wearing, maybe you would change it for something else or make something else out of it. It was just extremely different. My parents grew much of our vegetation.
Oh.
We had everything from fruits and vegetables that my mother used to bottle every year, so that we had it all winter, and every kind of vegetable you can imagine. We also had chickens.
Chickens?
Now
so
chickens
the eggs.
laid the eggs, and that was wonderful. But if you had chickens, then you could not purchase eggs at a grocery store.
Oh.
You were allowed one or the other.
Oh.
And so these chickens, luckily, were fairly productive, so that's how we survived with that. We had an air raid shelter, which my father built in the back garden.
Oh.
And
do you have beds and food in them?
We did. There was one bed either side and a little bed over there, which was mine, which was up in the ceiling. And our dog, we had a big collie dog, and Jock used to sleep right in between all of us. Now, we lived in that air raid shelter for 9 weeks one time.
Oh, that's a long time.
That's when the Blitz in London, of course, got most of the bombing. And I would drive with my father to work once in a while, which was a big treat for me. And we would be driving in the car and looking at so many great big buildings which had been bombed and now was just a pile of rubble.
Oh,
And by the end of the war, London, that's pretty much how London
destroyed.
was.
Oh, that must have been scary, though. Did you hear the bombs coming down?
We did, yes. And we all had blackouts. Every window was blacked out with a special material over the curtains so that no light could get through at all. And when they were bombing, they wouldn't know what exactly they were bombing. So that was how we survived that. You'd have the alert to say that planes were coming over, and when that started, we used to wear something called siren suits.
Siren suits?
Siren suits, and it was a suit that you got into and pulled up a zipper, and you were in it very quickly, and the three of us would run down the stairs in our siren suits and get out that door as fast as we could and into the shelter. And
how did they protect you?
well, the siren suits didn't really protect you, but they were very fast getting dressed. So you just stepped into them, pulled up the zipper, and you were out the door. And the dog would always be waiting. He knew that was a siren and would be waiting by the door for it to open so he could dash out and go down the shelter too. And that's how we lived. Bombs did drop, and one night one of the rockets, which were bombs that they made later during the war, and you wouldn't necessarily hear them, but then they would stop in a strategic point for them and then just come down. And this one night we didn't make it to the shelter.
Oh no.
And we knew that something was overhead, and it came down, and we were very lucky. I mean, we had windows come in, and I remember standing in that kitchen as a small child watching the light that swung back and forth like this, and I was somehow fascinated by that light. And then shortly afterwards, my father's best friend knocked on the door, and he and my father, their job was whenever we were attacked, right after that bombing, they would run out and see how they could help people who had been bombed. And Mr. Breen, who is my father's best friend, said, "John, we have to go now. There are bodies all over the street." That was in London, of course, and that's the way it was. We were very lucky. I mean, we just lost chimney pots and windows, but they lost everything at the end of the street. But anyway, London went on. They always were cheerful. They called them cheerful Cockneys because they all spoke with a Cockney accent, a lot of them.
What's a Cockney?
It's an accent where they still do it, but they drop their H's, like it's a very funny accent. But they say I had a great cup of tea today. And they drop the H's. So I think it was their sense of humor, a lot of it, that really kept them going. And
even through all that.
Through all that, they never stopped. And singing, maybe it's because I'm a Londoner.
Well, let's try to go to the good side. Thank you for that, because, you know, you never know. Hopefully that doesn't happen here, but Still, it's going on in the world, sadly,
Yes,
unfortunately.
it is, and that
And
is.
today's such a special day.
Yeah, and today
is the 80th anniversary in France, and President Biden is there. I believe his wife, and also the royal family are there today. This
And
is
my dad was there 80 years ago.
it
was
80
Yeah.
years ago. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
He was there.
Yeah, he was one of the first regiments to be sent out of Scotland, the King's Own Scottish Borderers, and they landed in Normandy, and they came off the boats with bagpipes playing, and the Germans considered them to be the women from hell because
They wore skirts.
because they wore skirts and because of the sound of the bagpipes. So
Oh.
it was interesting because my dad didn't really like to talk about the war because he was in the front lines. And so it was a difficult time. Scotland was not bombed the way that England was. My mom would tell stories of the German bombers circling up into Scotland and then turning around to go back and return to Germany or bomb England again. And they did not bomb Scotland. They would wave to the women and the children that were working in the fields.
Wow.
And so it was a very strange time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it's hard for a lot of people who lived through it to talk about it. So I appreciate it, Jean, that you can talk about it.
Thank you.
It must be difficult. I mean, you're 8, but it's still there.
It's something you
It's
never,
like the light.
never
you don't
totally
know,
forget.
Yeah.
But then England went on and many stages through their life, and finally we got the Beatles.
The Beatles. There you go. Did you the Queen, and everything? Did you ever meet them? Did you go to the coronation? Have you been in all these?
Well, the coronation we watched on television, and we watched her marriage on television.
the Queen.
The Queen. I have been in Buckingham Palace as a tourist, and in fact, the last time we were in England, my son and his children, we all went to Buckingham Palace, and it was absolutely beautiful. I mean, just the artwork alone on the walls was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Do those men in the red and black, they really stand
Beefeaters,
still?
yeah. Yes, they
the soldiers, the guards.
Yes.
The Beefeaters, yeah.
The Beefeaters?
Well, the Beefeaters are in the Tower of London, and they stand guard there and have for many, many, many years. But in London, outside Buckingham Palace, they have the Grenadier Guards and change guards, I believe, every 2 hours. But you will always see them with their red coats and black pants and their busbies.
Busbies?
They're busbies.
Oh, definitely had different names.
Yeah. and they stand and guard the palace. And it's wonderful if you're in London to go and see the changing of the guards, because they really do a remarkable job.
Have you ever seen, you've gone there?
Yes, I've been to London, but I mean, Scotland is famous for its castles, and
Its castles?
the Queen
you
has
too.
had a strong connection to Scotland, and so in Edinburgh, where I'm from, we have what's called the Royal Mile, and that connects Edinburgh Castle, which is the military fortress, and a mile of cobblestone downhill to the Palace of Holyrood House. And so when the Queen came to Edinburgh, that's where she would stay. Until she would go to her favorite place, which is Balmoral, which is in Aberdeenshire. And so even for her, when she was coronated, and I was really little at the time, but I do remember after the coronation in London, they brought the gold coach and the horses, and she actually went down Princess Street in Edinburgh, which is one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
Edinburgh?
Edinburgh, yeah. Full of arts, and it's just an incredible 1,700 of the buildings in Edinburgh are listed as historical landmarks.
Wow,
and
that's
so
good. They kept
the
so
largest number in the world.
Wow.
So it's absolutely, but yeah, and so she would come to Scotland often. And the pictures that you would see of the Queen walking on the hills with her corgi dogs,
Yes.
that was always at Balmoral. Yeah.
Oh.
So even after when she died, they actually brought her coffin up to Scotland, and she yeah, and so they had the parade all the way through Balmoral and everything.
Yeah, they said that she really loved.
Yeah. And why not? Scotland is absolutely beautiful.
I've
It's
never been there
amazing.
either. Yeah, or Ireland, with our
Yeah,
friend
right,
that's
right,
listening to us. But
Yes, the
Yeah,
British
beautiful.
Isles is really
Yeah.
maybe someday. It's on my bucket list.
good.
I almost got to go there once.
That's good.
I was a teenager,
I
but
hope you make it.
yeah.
And Ireland is very beautiful too.
So, how about festivals? Like Doreen, did you have?
I mean, Scotland and particularly Edinburgh is really well known for its festivals. And so coming out of the Second World War, they started the military tattoo, which happens once a year in August, and that's on the esplanade of the castle. And like 250,000 people a year come to see that performance, and it's all military. And so that's from the all of the British Armed Forces, but then it's invited from all the different countries' military performances.
Oh.
So they'll often have like American or the Gurkhas from India, dancers, and so there's this huge military festival. And at the same time, they started what was known originally as the Edinburgh International Festival, which is now called the Fringe Festival. It's the largest performing arts festival in the world.
Wow.
It goes on for weeks at a time.
Oh, weeks?
Weeks.
It's
weeks
not a one
at
day.
a time. And it's the same thing. People come in from all over the world to perform. And, there are hundreds of venues throughout the city that all these performances are happening at. And it might be a basement of a church or, a hall or, and they're just happening all over the city. I mean, I will say that I think that, I didn't realize when I was growing up what an honor and what an amazing city Edinburgh was to grow up in, because the history, the architecture, but the arts, and I never really understood why I had such a passion for art.
Yeah.
But I remember being little and my mom and I taking the bus into Edinburgh, and on Princess Street has shops on one side and then all these beautiful gardens on the other, and they have all these outdoor amphitheaters, and they would have musical performances, dance performances, theaters, children's programs. Saturday free. You would just go there.
Free?
Yeah. And so I grew up with that, and I thought everybody had that.
Right? Why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so, but Edinburgh and Scotland in general are really known for their festivals and their celebrations. Hogmanay, which is the New Year's Eve, is a huge festival, as is Beltane. Very much pagan-based roots in Scotland, but international literature festivals, jazz festivals, you name it.
Jazz too.
Yeah, it's like we well-rounded in Great Britain. Yeah,
Do they have folk?
Absolutely. A lot of Scottish,
and
Scottish folk songs are incredible.
Do they
As
still have
are
this
the
today?
Irish.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean
Yeah,
to interrupt.
no.
Do they have this today?
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, when you look at the Fringe Festival, it has the same attendance as the Olympics and the World Cup. That's how many people come. And about 40% of those people that attend are from outside Great Britain. So people will schedule their trip to Scotland to be there in August so they can experience it. But we like to party. And, you know, we like to dress up and we like to party.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Did your dad wear the kilt?
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, he wore it in battle. He wore
Yeah.
it to my wedding.
Wore it to your wedding?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
When I walked down the aisle, we had bagpipers in front of us.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so, yeah,
I
my
like the
dad
bag-
had his kilt on.
Did he
Yeah.
know how to do the bagpipe too? Or
No, but his best friends all played. So I grew up being woken up on Sunday mornings at 7:00 with,
Oh.
you know, my dad's friends playing the bagpipes in the yard. Yeah. But my daughters studied Scottish Highland dancing. And so we used to travel all throughout New England, and they would compete in the Scottish games.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, right here in America.
So sword dancing, you know,
Yeah.
the one that you most usually think of. Sailor hornpipe, Irish jig. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
the Irish jig.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So,
When did you leave and why? Do you know?
yeah.
Is your-
So we left in 1963, and I was 14 at the time, and it wasn't my choice to leave. It was my parents' decision, and they had wanted to leave probably almost 10 years before that. We were actually booked to move to Australia, where some of my dad's family had moved to Australia. But my dad wanted to make a better life for us. And he thought that moving to Australia or the United States would give us more opportunities. But what happened is when we were going to Australia, my sister decided she was going to get married because she was older than I. So we stayed for a while, and then in '63, my dad got the bug again that it was time to move. So we came to the United States. Yeah, and been here since.
You miss it though.
Yeah, very much. I mean, it was only my mom and dad and I who came. So all of my relatives are there, including, although she's passed now, my sister. And so I still am very connected to my sister's children and their children.
Yeah.
And so, and then, you know, I have a few aunts and uncles still left.
So you visit them.
Yes.
Nice. Very nice. How about you, Jean? Do you still have relatives? And
I
why did you
don't.
come?
I was an only child, and I lost my father when I was 12.
Aw.
But I have many wonderful memories of him.
How did you survive with just you and your mom then?
We opened up a boarding house,
Oh.
and it turned out to be totally amazing. And,
your mom is very business.
She was, and it was absolutely incredible. But we started off rented to Remington Rand, which is an American company, and when people were going over there to work, they would stay with us.
Ah.
And it went on from there, and we literally had people staying with us from all walks of life. And one in particular that I have told you about in the
Yes,
past
it's very interesting.
was that this lady drove up to the car in a Rolls Royce, and she was Lady Duke Elder, wife of the royal oculist. And she said that she had friends coming over for several months, and she needed a place for them to stay near the ice rink. And they arrived, the coach arrived, and another lady, and the girl who was the ice skater. And
Was she in the Olympics?
she eventually became the world figure skating champion.
Ah.
She spent several months with us. She's kept in touch after she left. Just a delightful girl, and just so many wonderful experiences with that, and wonderful memories.
Did you have to cook for them? Did you?
My mother cooked all the time.
How old were you?
I was 12 when my father died. By 13 we had started, and when she sometimes took a break and went to visit her sister, I would do the cooking, which was
young.
which was a real laugh. And but we had lots of giggles and lots of fun.
It was still very wise of your mom to.
It was, yes, thank you. It was very, very, it was a great way to make a living, and we did that until she felt she couldn't go on anymore. And
Well, they're telling us we have to close. Darn it. I loved all your conversations, and I want to know more. I'm sure you do too. But we have to close. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Love you.
thank you.
Love you. Maybe we'll have him come back and talk some more. Or maybe we can get our other friend who's from Ireland to talk.
Then we'll have the
But we won't say her
many
name.
stories.
But thank you for tuning in, and thank you.
Thank you,
It's
You're
Christine.
welcome.
Yes.
Our pleasure.
very interesting.
Follow us on Instagram at nutmeg.tv.
The water's warm at Jaws Pond, and we're stocked full of treasures. Big or small, we buy it all. We buy and sell fast rides, power tools, vintage guitars, and so much more. Walk the plank in style with our fine jewelry, diamonds, and watches. Plus, we have a huge selection of the latest video games, including the new PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Jaws Pond, conveniently located on Meriden Waterbury Turnpike in Southington and West Main Street in New Britain.